Try except has a couple other components that we can leverage if we so desire, and they add functionality to our try except blocks. And these are the else block and the finally block. As we see here, we can have try except else finally. The else block runs if the try block did not raise any exceptions, and the finally block executes no matter what, typically for cleanup tasks. So I've got an example over here that we'll walk through. So I've made this a little bit, the text a little bit smaller for you so you can see everything. So if we have a zero division error that we're looking for, let's say we have a computation that may return a zero division error. We can use a try block and put our code that may return that error, that exception. And then we have our except statement, accepted zero division error. Print cannot divide by zero. Now, if no exception is raised, I've got our cheat sheet up here that we can use. If no exception was raised, we'll enter the else block. And then finally always runs. So we can think the try block and the finally block always run. Except the except block runs when there's an exception. The else block runs when there's not an exception. So that's how we can think of it. So if we have 10 divided by 0, what's going to happen here? We are going to run into an exception, right? So we will run into that 0. This print cannot divide by 0. We will not execute the else. Result is result. We will always execute the finally. So we'll print execution finished. Let's try that. So we just ran it. As we see, cannot divide by 0. Execution finished. What if we have a statement here that does not throw an error? Then what will happen? Well, will we enter this except block to catch an error? No, because there will not be an error as the result of what is in the try block. So we'll skip the except block. Will we enter this else block, which runs if there is no exception? Yes, we will. We'll print the result. Will we enter the finally block? Yes, we will, because that's always run. So let's run this. So we say result is 2.0 from our else block and execution finished from our finally block. And obviously the try, that always runs again. As we see, result gets set to the value of 2.0. We just are not outputting anything in the try block. So that's a primer on try except else finally, adding the else and finally catches there. Wanted you to be aware of those. It's good to know about. Often we only need try and except, and that will fulfill our purposes for catching exceptions. But sometimes we may need else and finally, just depending on the situation. We'll probably talk about that more later in the course, but wanted you to be aware of that and add that to your toolkit.